Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to cover recent sales for vintage mint on card Star Wars action figures. And I've got a nice range here from 12 backs all the way through the glass slate Brazilian Star Wars that came out in 1985, 1986, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't remember exactly where, but just a really nice assortment here. Most of these were auctions on eBay, so we can take a closer look at where prices are right now. And if you watch my Heritage video from the December premiere Heritage auction, we saw significantly lower prices on the big boy items, the grails. And the question is going to be, is that going to trickle down to the more common stuff that most of us buy? And our price is going to be flat. Part of it may be seasonality. We got the holidays. People are spending on other things. So I just thought today's video does a pretty good job of covering those types of items. And it's just food for thought as you kind of go into 2025. Is our price is going to drop? Or the alternative, Hakes has Jeff Jacobs' collection, and they're all really high grade, a lot of really hard to find items. Is that going to drive prices even higher? And some of those items go for significantly above where we've been seeing sales just because of the grade, just because of the rarity. So enough talking for me. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we got some items interspersed through this video from Gold Star Tech as usual. It's like they have a never-ending supply. They must have gotten a huge collection in to resell, but this was a 12-back B Darth Vader punched example. No price sticker, AFA 80 plus. That sold in an auction for $23.25. $23.25, 85, 80, 80 are the subscores on that one. And I believe this is also a 12-back B. Obviously not nearly as good a condition as the one that Gold Star Tech had, AFA 80 plus. This one has some creasing all along the card here, and some scratches towards the top of the card, as you can see. Toys R Us price sticker, again, a punched example, clear blister that was in pretty good shape overall. So that gives you a nice range for, let's call it a 70 or 75 grade, all the way to an 80 plus. $15.08 was the sales price on this one versus Gold Star Tech's AFA 80 plus that sold for $23.25. So that just shows you condition does matter, and it can play a significant role in the price. Although I would argue that $15.08, that actually went a little higher than I was expecting. I was thinking kind of in that $1,000 to $1,200 range. Just because when you're buying something like this, you're taking a little bit of risk that there's, you're taking grading risk if you decide to grade it, which I would argue that any 12 back in really decent shape, you probably should grade it just to protect it and have an idea of what the condition is. But given that you're buying this and having to take the grading risk and making sure it's all legit, no, sticker touch-ups or ink touch-ups, things like that, I was actually a little surprised that one went as high as it did. Gold Star Tech had a 12-back A Death Squad Commander punched example. Again, pretty good shape overall, though. This one probably gets an 80. I didn't look at the back, though. Yeah, it's in pretty good shape. I mean, this has got a good chance at an 80. It did have some crease around the hang tab, so maybe that holds it back. Certainly a 75 plus, I would think, on this one. And that one sold for $7.10, so not a bad deal at all for a 12A Death Squad Commander. And I think that was a pretty good buy for an early card back. Likewise, 20-back a Jawa punched example, clear blister, 75, 85, 85 were the sub-scores on that one. But another very clean example for the Jawa. That one sold at $6.11, which I thought was a really good price for what it is. And, that's hard to beat. That's a hard to beat price for a near mint example for the Jawa. Jada 34, again, I don't know this seller, but they seem to have items that come up for sale at auction pretty regularly. This one did have a shaved pop, so you got to be careful and make sure you take a look at all the photos. But you can see very clearly there on the back, it's got a shaved pop. This was a 20-back Greedo. Even with the shaved pop, it still sold for $540, so that was a big number there. It's a shame that it did have a shaved pop because it was in really good shape. Light edge wear to it, but unpunched example. Very nice looking card back overall. $540 on that one. We got two different Han Solo Hoths that sold. First is the 31 back A debut card AFA 85 with a yellowed blister. So straight 85s for the subscores, but it was labeled yellowed. I didn't really see any yellowing to the blister on this one, but who knows what's going on there. And that one sold for $11.50. 3 bids on that one. $11.50 for a yellowed blister 31A debut card Han Hoth. And then we had this one from Gold Star Tech. This was an unpunched 41A survival kit offer with a clear blister. Very clean example, though, that I think would grade very well. And that one sold for $307, which I thought was a bargain of a price. Here's the back of the card. You can see how clean this is. I mean, I think this probably pretty easily gets an 80 grade, right? And, it had a little wear around the hang tab that was very minor, but I think pretty easily this one gets an 80 grade for $307. That is a bargain of a price, if you ask me. Next up was another 41A. This is the Imperial Commander, and this one did have a Toys R Us price sticker. That one held the price back a little bit. AFA 80 on that one. And 80, 85, 90 were the subscores. So 2 pretty high subscores for 340 pounds, which is 433 US dollars. And, you can maybe, it's probably just lighting, but sometimes it's like an optical illusion where sometimes it looks like it might be yellowed in that upper left and up and lower right corner. But it's labeled a clear blister, and I tend to think it still is. It's just, some of the pictures, it looks like it's yellowed. Sometimes it doesn't. This one doesn't look yellow to me on this one. So, again, 433 on him. And then we had 2 different 21 back Boba Fett's that sold. One graded, one ungraded. This was the ungraded example, and a very clean card. I didn't see any issues with it. Probably grades pretty well. Probably at least an 80, I would think. It had one little litho issue in the upper right, probably from where they tried to remove a sticker, a price sticker. $19.25 on that one on 24 bids. And then Brian's Toys had the exact same card back, 21 back, Boba Fett, AFA 85, 75, 85 were the subscores for an overall 80. Really nice example at auction. That one sold for $35.50, so pretty big price disparity for what I would argue this one probably gets about the same grade, I would think. If not even a little higher on the blister. This was a 75 blister score. You can make an argument that this one's going to score probably better than a 75 for the blister. But, you're taking risks here. It looks like it may be pulling away in the upper left-hand corner. You can see a little bit of smudge mark there around the seal. And then, it just looks like, it looks clean, don't get me wrong. It looks fully sealed. But again, you are taking some risk on something like this versus one that's already been certified and authenticated by AFA. And that's why you get the price difference sometimes on sometimes when they're selling around the same time and they're the exact same item. Next up was a lower grade 48 back. This was the 48 back B. It says 48. Yeah, 48B. I'm sorry. Yeah, 48B. So it's got the sticker for the Admiral Akbar and then a sticker for the free Revenge of the Jedi on the front. 48Cs, they moved over to the printed offer. But this was a clear blister IG88, but it was only an AFA 60. So the card got a 60, blister 75, figure 75. I still get questions all the time from people saying, well, if you got 275 subscores, why didn't it round up to like a 70 or a 70 plus? It's because when all the grading companies, if one of the subscores is quote unquote bad enough, then it's going to bring the whole score down. Okay. So a 60 subscore brings the whole score down. And I don't know why it got the 60. I mean, at first blush, it looked pretty good, but you got some chipping on the upper right corner there on that. Is that enough for it to be a 60? I guess so. I mean, it's got some chipping all the way around it, but that seems unusually harsh. It does have a little bit of a shadow from the price sticker on the right-hand side by a little bit above IG88's head. So enough, I guess all of that together was enough. I mean, I don't know if it's got some faint creasing that we can't see very well. A 60 seems really harsh to me. But that's the way it works, okay? So that, if the score is low enough. Now, if this had been a card score of a 70, then maybe the overall score gets to a 70 plus or a 75. But when you have one subscore that is really, really bad, oftentimes it is enough in the graders' minds to keep the overall score down. So that's what happens there on that. It's not always going to be an average. It's not an average. I mean, it's not an average. Sometimes they do round it up, though, if it's not too bad. If it's viewed as not too bad of a 70 or, things like that. So you got to keep all that in mind. And, the subscores do tell a better story as to the overall condition. Now, in my opinion, 60 for the card score seems really harsh on this. And this presents way better than a 60. And I can see why somebody paid up to $360 on this. Now, if this had been an AFA 80 or 80 plus grade, you can probably safely 2.5 times that number. This is, an $800 to $1,000 item very easily. No price score, unpunched, and a tougher to find character card back combination. So 360 seems like a pretty good deal for what it is. And, fills a hole in your collection. Some people are looking for specific card backs and specific characters, and they don't want to pay $1,000. Well, you just got to look for these kinds of examples where this one presents a lot nicer than what the grading label says. So I think that was a very fair deal for what it was. Some other items. There was a yellowed AFA 80 Han trench coat. Nothing crazy here, but 79 back A. That one sold for $276. Very fair price for what that is. The Lily Letty made in Mexico Darth Vaders, to me, seem to be holding their value very well. This was a 75 plus grade, and these do tend to stay clear blister. Now you can see on the left-hand side on the left-hand side of the blister here, it's got very similar chipping to what we just saw on the IG-88. So it tends to make me think that something else was going on the IG-88, maybe some soft creases that didn't show very well in the photos. It had a scratch by the hang tab. So, a lot of the condition for this one, at least looking at the photos, looks very similar to the AFA 60. But this one got the AFA 75 plus. So, you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes until you get it in hand. But this one sold for $408, which, I think that's a very strong, solid price for what that is. A made in Mexico Lily Letty for the U.S. market. And you can see there, it's got the hole punch that goes through the card around the return of the Jedi. That's almost always where that punch is. It's a factory applied punch. And then in the lower left, you can see made in Mexico. These card backs are a little more faded versus standard US 77 and 79 backs, things like that. So 408 on that one. They also had this one. This was a stunner. I think I had this one in a what to buy video. This is a clear blister Han Solo on a Return of the Jedi 77 back B AFA 80. So really nice Han Solo. Anytime you get those first 12 figures on Return of the Jedi cards, those tend to be pretty sought after, especially if they stay clear blister like this. So that one sold for $740, and again, not terribly surprising on that price. That's about where it should be. Here was a Hollow Cheeks. I think this was a relist from a non-paying buyer, but the Hollow Cheeks Tusken Raider mint on card, which is on the 65B. The 65B is where they came. It's where they were shown up on. So I can't talk today. Forgive my terrible my terrible grammar. AFA 75. So this was a relist, I believe, and it sold for $787, which is about where it sold the first time. But it had 285 subscores, so I thought that was a really, really nice deal. 6 to 9 months ago, this was probably closer to $1,000, even in a 75 grade. So that number has come down significantly. Next up, I do have some more Return of the Jedi overstock 2-packs from KB Toys that sold, and some interesting combinations, some fairly standard ones. I was a little surprised this one went the lowest with having C-3PO on there, but I don't collect these, so I don't know them very well. Maybe C-3PO. This is probably the removable limbs C-3PO, just because of the time frame for when this one came out. But Akbar and a removable limb C-3PO. This one sold for $215. The Walrus Man and Bib Fortuna, I thought this one would go higher as well. But again, I don't know why, which character combination. I mean, obviously, if you get Vader or Luke or Princess Leia, if you get those on a 2-pack, those always go for a lot of money. But I was thinking, well, Walrus Man, that's not something you really see very often. I bet, though, that it must be very common since it only sold for $256. The General Madine and Akbar, two pretty common characters on these 2-packs, $262.50. And then we had Squidhead with C-3PO. That one sold a little bit more money, $361. This one surprised me though. This one went for $451, and it had Weequay with Han Trenchcoat. So who knows? I don't know why. You know, to me, Han Trenchcoat appears pretty regularly on these, and Weequay is another one that's not terribly uncommon. To me, if it was like Biker Scout or Gamorrean Guard with Han Solo, I could have seen 451, but apparently that's a pretty tough combination to get. Or we got into a bidding war between two people that collect these, and they both needed this particular character combo. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting how those prices shaked out. Here's the only buy it now that I wanted to show because it was a beauty. And I thought this was a great deal. I sent this out to my Patreon supporters, and I believe one of you bought it. I know I saw a comment on one of my videos saying they bought this, but this was a Wicket W. Warwick on the Ewoks cartoon card back. Unpunched, clear blister, and they usually do stay clear blister because they were made in Mexico, as you can see on the back here. Figure made in Mexico. I think it was the Logray and the Wicket were made in Mexico. So this was a beauty, though. It was just a beautiful condition, unpunched, no price sticker, very high grade, and it was listed for $600, which I thought even at that price, that was pretty fair. I've seen them loose complete, at least at one point. They were going for about that price, just for the Wicket himself with the spear. So this was a really fair deal, in my opinion, and it was a best offer accepted. The best offer accepted was $500. So they got, about $100 off this price. I thought that was a really good deal. Absolutely. If you happen to be the one that bought that, I would absolutely grade that. I mean, that would grade an 80 or an 80 plus, I think, pretty easily. It did have one ding in the upper portion of the card, which may hold it back from, getting higher than an 80 grade. But to me, it's an 80, 85, 85. Maybe an 80-80 because it does have some scuffing on the blister front. So maybe 80-85, somewhere in that ballpark. And an overall 80 pretty easily. That was a nice example, very fairly priced, and you got $100 off on that one. So good buy, whoever that was that picked that one up. And then finally, here is that Droids Glassleet Brazilian version of Kaz-Iban. And this was mint on card. I believe this also was a relist. And it did have a crease in the upper portion of the card back there, some structural creases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, plus some around the hang tab. So it was not perfect, but it was a beauty. Really, really nice example. These don't pop up that often, and I guess whoever bought it originally did not pay. I love that card image. Look at that awesome card image there. That is beautiful card art. So that one sold for $406, which to me, that's a really good deal. There are two different Kaz-Ibans. There's the standard US version, and then there's the Glassleet version. So you're getting a Glassleet version of Kaz-Iban mint on card for $406. That to me feels like a steal of a deal. That's a really, really good buy there. So who knows? I don't know why, some of these things that Gold Star Tech, they just have so many auctions that end constantly each day. Maybe not each day, but multiple times per week. And so some of them do fall during the week at weird times. People get occupied with work or, putting their kids to bed or what. So, just be on the lookout. It's a seller that you want to track because at least lately, I mean, they have some really good deals that kind of fall through the cracks. And this was definitely one of them, in my opinion. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do leave me a like if you did, and I'll be back soon.